Good morning, friends. Pastor Kelly here with you with the Friday edition of Grace Thoughts. Hey, on Monday, we looked at the word loss. On Wednesday, we looked at the word grief. And now I want to look at this word trauma. Trauma doesn't happen with every loss and every grief, but it happens with many of them. Let's just put it that way. Trauma simply means to be wounded. Using somebody else's definition, trauma is a normal reaction to abnormal events that overwhelms a person's ability to adapt to life at that moment, where you seem absolutely powerless. As we've said earlier, were never intended to lose loved ones. We were never intended to grieve. And so depending on how that all plays out and depending on how it happens with each individual, there's a level of trauma involved. If I have been taking care of my sick parents or a sick spouse or a sick child by their bedside for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, even months, and all of a sudden they're taken from us. Now, we knew they were going to go and we were going to lose them to death, but that moment when they're taking is traumatic. And sometimes it can set our minds off for many months, even years. Let me read you a medical definition of the word trauma. Trauma changes all proper brain functioning. Trauma is a wound. It is the wounding of the brain. It overwhelms the normal adaptations to life. It is not just an emotional response to troubling events. It's the expression of persistent deregulation of body chemistry. And brain chemistry can be altered sometimes for decades. With this change, arousing events can trigger flashbacks. Trauma creates chaos in our brains and can cause an emotional as well as cognitive concussion. Entering the world of trauma is like looking into a fractured looking glass. The familiar appears disjointed and disturbing, and a strange new world unfolds. And being somebody who has been heavily traumatized with the loss of our daughter, I could say that is amazingly accurate. After we lost Hannah, I was privileged enough to talk with Dr. Norman Wright on 2 different occasions. He was one of the best grief counselors in the world, in the country. He just went home to be with the Lord recently himself. And he knew our story of what happened with our daughter and how we lost her. And he told me, he just said, it's going to be 5 years before you begin to even understand it. And he said, before your nose gets above the waterline. He says, it'll be 10 years for your wife. And he goes, and your daughter is going to be, Sadie, is going to be an adolescent before she begins to manifest some of the manifestations of this trauma. And I can honestly say it was about 5 years. It's been 8.5 years now since we lost Hannah. It's about 5 years I sensed that there's all of a sudden I burst above the water and I could sort of had a vision again, a purpose again. Now in the meantime, I was functioning that whole time. I was walking through life. I was studying the Bible. I was preaching the gospel. I was doing the things I've always did for those 5 years. But something wasn't right with me. And I could say at 5 years it began to click again. My brain started clicking in again. That's what trauma does. It deregulates your brain chemistry, changes you, in some cases, many cases, to some degree, forever. And we're going to look at trauma over next week, and we're going to show you how, by the grace of God, we can begin overcoming some of these different traumas in our lives. But bless you all. Have a great weekend. See you Monday. Bye.